They say the best revenge is living well. But I'll let you in on something nobody tells you about revenge. The best kind isn't loud. It isn't emotional. It doesn't involve screaming in parking lots or sending long text messages at 2 a.m. The best revenge is quiet. It's patient. It shows up in a tailored blazer, sits at the head of a boardroom table, and with a completely calm voice, says 2 words. You're fired. Welcome to Betravex. I'm Emma Thompson, and this is my true story. Grab something to drink. Get comfortable. Because what I'm about to tell you took me 3 years, hundreds of sleepless nights, and everything I had left in me, and I would do it all over again without hesitation. Drop a comment below if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely. And make sure you subscribe, because you are going to want to see where this ends. Let me take you back to where it all started. Chicago, 2019. I was 29 years old, married to a man named Daniel. Daniel Hargrove. Tall, confident, the kind of man who walked into a room and somehow made everyone believe he was already the most important person there. We had met in college, a business administration program at Northwestern. He was charming, driven, and I genuinely believed he was the love of my life. We got married young, 24 years old, both of us, standing in front of 200 people in a garden ceremony outside Chicago. My mother cried. His mother cried. I cried. Daniel smiled that wide smile and said his vows like he meant every single word. For 5 years, from the outside, we looked perfect. We had a 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. Daniel had built a mid-sized marketing and consulting firm from the ground up, Hargrove Solutions. It wasn't massive, but it was growing. 43 employees. Solid revenue. He was proud of it, and I was proud of him. I supported that company from the very beginning. When he was launching it, I worked 2 jobs, as a part-time bookkeeper and a customer service rep, so that he could quit his day job and pour everything into the business. I cooked meals at midnight. I organized his files. I sat with him through every setback, every client rejection, every late invoice. I gave up my own ambitions for his dream. I had been accepted to an MBA program. I deferred, then deferred again, then quietly let the acceptance expire because Daniel said we couldn't afford for both of us to be in school and building the company at the same time. I believed him. I chose us. By 2019, I had become what people politely call a housewife. I managed our home. I handled our personal finances. I hosted dinners for Daniel's clients. I was the invisible infrastructure of his entire life, and I was okay with that, because I trusted him, because I loved him, because I thought that what we had was real. And my best friend, my absolute closest friend in the world, was a woman named Kayla Morris. Kayla and I had been friends since the 7th grade. 17 years of friendship. She was my maid of honor. She was the person I called when I was scared, when I was confused, when I needed someone to sit across a table from me and tell me the truth. She was the kind of friend who knew every single version of you, the embarrassing ones, the broken ones, the ones you don't show anyone else. I trusted Kayla the way you trust the ground under your feet. You don't think about it. You just walk. That was my first mistake. It was a Tuesday in October. Nothing special about that day. No warning. No thunder in the sky. Just a regular Tuesday. Daniel had told me he had a late client dinner. He did that sometimes. Client meetings that ran into the evening. I never questioned it. I had no reason to. I made myself dinner, watched something on television, and went to bed early with a book. Around 11 o'clock, I couldn't sleep. I reached for my phone to text Daniel to ask what time he'd be home. And then I noticed something strange. He had shared his location with me months ago, one of those things couples do casually. And his phone showed him not at a restaurant, not at a client's office, but at an address 15 minutes from our house. I recognized that address immediately. It was Kayla's apartment. I sat in bed for 3 full minutes without moving. My brain kept telling me there was an explanation. Maybe he stopped by to surprise her for her birthday, which had been the week before. Maybe something was wrong and she called him. Maybe. I drove there. I shouldn't have. But I did. I will not describe everything I saw when I arrived. But I will tell you this. It was not a birthday surprise. And the look on their faces when they realized I was standing there was not the look of 2 people who had just started something. It was the look of 2 people who had been hiding something for a very long time. Daniel said my name. Just my name. Like the word was supposed to fix something. I turned around and drove home. I didn't cry that night. I sat in our kitchen in complete silence until the sun came up. And then Daniel came home, and he sat down across from me, and he told me it had been going on for 14 months. 14 months. While I was cooking his dinners, hosting his clients, organizing his life, he had been building a secret one with my best friend. He told me he wanted a divorce. He said he was sorry. He said a lot of things that I cannot repeat because I have worked too hard to get to a place where his words don't still cut me open. I nodded. I asked him to leave. He left. I called Kayla. She didn't answer. She has never answered. Not once in 3 years. That silence told me everything I needed to know about the friendship I thought I had. What nobody tells you about betrayal is what happens after the dramatic moment, after the confrontation, after the door closes and the car drives away. What nobody prepares you for is the ordinary Tuesday that follows. You still have to eat. You still have to pay bills. You still have to get up in the morning. The divorce proceedings began within weeks. And that is when I discovered the full extent of what I was walking into. Because while I had been managing our household, Daniel had been quietly restructuring his finances. Hargrove Solutions, the company I had helped him build from nothing, had been reorganized 18 months prior. He had brought in a business partner, a man named Victor, who technically owned 51% of the company on paper. My attorney looked at the documents and told me gently that on paper, Daniel only owned a minority stake, meaning the company. The company I sacrificed my MBA for, that I stayed up late to help organize, that I made possible, was not considered a marital asset in the way we might have argued. We had no children. The house had a mortgage and less equity than I expected. Our joint savings had been drained methodically over the previous year. Transfers labeled as business investments. Legitimate looking. Invisible if you weren't looking closely. I was 29 years old, and I walked away from my marriage with $14,000, a used Honda Civic, and 2 boxes of clothes. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the north side of Chicago. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like a boot. The radiator made a sound at night like someone knocking from the inside. I cried in that apartment every day for 2 months. Not because I missed Daniel, but because I had given a decade of my life, my energy, my ambitions, my possibilities, to someone who had been counting down to the moment he could discard me. I stopped eating properly. I stopped calling people. I applied for jobs and got rejected. My resume showed years of being a housewife with a bookkeeping side job. Nobody was interested. At my lowest point, I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment at 3 a.m., eating crackers because I hadn't gone grocery shopping in a week, thinking, this is it. This is who I am now. This is what I get. That thought made me so angry that I couldn't sleep. And that anger, that specific kind of quiet, grinding, cold anger, was the thing that saved me. 30 days after moving into that apartment, I made a decision. Not a loud decision, not a dramatic one. I didn't make a vision board or write a revenge plan on my bathroom mirror. I simply decided that I was not going to let this be the end of my story, that I was going to build something, that one day, Daniel Hargrove was going to understand exactly what he threw away, and Kayla was going to understand the same. But I was not going to rush it. I was not going to be reckless. I was going to be surgical. The first thing I did was call the MBA program I had abandoned years earlier. I explained my situation honestly to an admissions counselor, a woman named Dr. Patricia Owens, and she was kinder to me than I expected. She told me about an accelerated part-time program designed specifically for working professionals. 18 months. Intensive. Expensive. I told her I'd figure out the money. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I got 2 partial ones. I took out a student loan for the rest. I enrolled. Then I got a job. Not a glamorous one. I went back to bookkeeping. But this time I targeted small and mid-sized businesses, the kind that needed part-time help but couldn't afford a full accounting department. I built a client list slowly. 6 clients. Then 12. I worked from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. most days. School on evenings and weekends. Work during the day. Sleep when I could. I did not date. I did not go out. I did not spend money on anything that was not rent, food, school, or transportation. For 18 months, I lived like a monk. And I learned everything. Finance, operations, organizational management, corporate strategy, human resources, negotiation. Every class I took seriously. Because I wasn't doing this for a grade. I was doing this for a reason. And quietly, in the background of all of this, I started watching Hargrove Solutions. Here's something interesting about the company I had helped build, and then lost in a divorce settlement. It was struggling, not publicly. Daniel was still maintaining appearances. New website, bigger office, LinkedIn posts about company culture and industry awards. But I had spent enough years around that business to know how to read the signals underneath the surface. Client turnover was high. 2 of his senior directors had left within 6 months of each other. I found out through mutual industry contacts. He had lost 2 major accounts that had been with the company since the beginning. And Kayla, who had been hired as his head of marketing director shortly after the divorce was finalized, which told me everything, was clearly not delivering results. I watched. I said nothing. I kept working. After finishing my MBA, I took a position at a mid-sized corporate consulting firm in New York City. Not a senior position, an analyst role. Junior enough that nobody looked at me too closely, senior enough that I was in the rooms where decisions were made. I was good at my job. I was better than good. Within 8 months, I had been promoted once. Within 14 months, twice. My specialty became acquisition analysis, evaluating struggling companies for potential purchase, restructuring them, and positioning them for growth. I became the person the firm called when a company looked messy and needed someone to find the clean line through the chaos. And then one afternoon, my director walked into my office and set a file on my desk. He said, "There's a Chicago-based marketing consultancy that 2 of our investment clients are circling. 47 employees, declining revenue, founder is looking for an exit. We need a full acquisition evaluation by end of month. Your lead analyst." The file said Hargrove Solutions. I picked up the folder. I kept my face completely still. I said, "I'll handle it." He nodded and walked out. I sat alone in my office for a long moment. Then I opened the file and got to work. 3 years had passed since that Tuesday night in October when I drove to Kayla's apartment and watched my life crack open. I was no longer the woman who sat on a kitchen floor eating crackers at 3 a.m. I was living in a clean apartment in Manhattan. I wore suits that I had saved for and bought carefully. I had built a professional reputation that had nothing to do with Daniel Hargrove, nothing to do with being someone's wife, nothing to do with the woman I had been when I was invisible. I had done it completely alone. No family money, no connections, no shortcuts. Just the kind of work that doesn't look impressive until it suddenly does. During the acquisition evaluation, I spent 6 weeks going through every document related to Hargrove Solutions. Revenue reports, client contracts, HR records, operational costs. I was thorough in a way that only someone who once cared deeply about a thing, and was then robbed of it, could be. What I found confirmed what I had suspected. The company was poorly managed. Daniel had great instincts as a salesman, but no discipline as an operator. Costs were out of control. The marketing department, Kayla's department, had produced no measurable ROI for over a year. Clients were leaving not because the market was hard, but because service quality had dropped significantly. But underneath all of that dysfunction, the company had something valuable. Long-standing client relationships in 3 specific sectors. A solid operational team that had mostly survived despite bad leadership, and a brand with genuine recognition in the Chicago market. With the right restructuring, with the right leadership, it was salvageable. I wrote the most detailed acquisition analysis of my career. I presented it to the investment group with a full restructuring proposal. I argued not just for acquiring the company, but for a specific post-acquisition leadership structure. And then, near the end of my presentation, I said something I had been preparing to say for 3 years. I said, "I want to lead the restructuring personally. I know this company's foundation better than anyone in this room. I can take it from where it is to where it should be. And I want to be considered for the CEO position post-acquisition." There was a pause in the room. Then the senior partner said, "We've seen your work for 14 months. We don't need to think about it. The position is yours if the deal closes." The deal closed on a Thursday morning in November. I flew to Chicago the following week. I wore a charcoal blazer. My hair was pulled back. I carried a leather portfolio and a cup of black coffee. I had not been back to Chicago in 2 years. The board had communicated to Hargrove Solutions that new leadership would be arriving for a company-wide transition meeting. Daniel knew the company had been acquired. What he did not know, what nobody had told him, was who the new CEO was. I walked into that building on a Monday morning. The receptionist looked up at me. She was new, didn't know me. She asked if I had an appointment. I told her I was the new CEO and that I had a company-wide meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. I watched her eyes go wide as she picked up the phone to call upstairs. The all-staff meeting was held in the main conference room. I stood at the front of the room. 47 employees. And somewhere in the back, near the wall, Daniel Hargrove stood in a suit, arms crossed, looking at the door for whoever was walking through it. He saw me. I watched the color leave his face in a way that I will remember for the rest of my life. Kayla was sitting at the marketing team's table. She saw me 2 seconds after he did. She reached for her phone instinctively, then put it back down. I opened the meeting. I introduced myself professionally. I outlined the acquisition, the restructuring timeline, the vision for the company going forward. I spoke calmly, clearly, and with complete authority. I did not look at Daniel. I did not look at Kayla. I did not need to. After the general meeting, I called individual department heads in for one-on-one sessions. I spent the day conducting assessments. Daniel's session was scheduled for 3 p.m. He came in and sat across from me at a table I was now sitting at as his employer. He said, "Emma." I said, "Mr. Hargrove, thank you for coming in. This is an evaluation of your current role and your value to the organization going forward. He said, "You can't be serious." I said, "I'm always serious. This is a professional environment." The evaluation lasted 22 minutes. At the end of it, I informed him that based on the restructuring plan, his position, which had essentially been a founder's sinecure with no defined operational responsibilities, was being eliminated. I told him the severance package was outlined in the document in front of him. I told him he had until Friday to collect his personal items. He sat there for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, "You did all of this just to get back at me." I looked at him evenly and said, "No, I did all of this because I was always capable of it. You just never paid attention." Kayla's session was at 4 p.m. She walked in and sat down and said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "Emma, please." I said, "This is a performance review, Miss Morris. The marketing department's output over the past 14 months has shown no measurable ROI. 3 major clients cited poor communication as a reason for departure. The team's internal satisfaction scores are the lowest in the company." I paused. Then I said, "The position is being eliminated as part of the restructuring." She said my name again. I told her the HR team would walk her through the exit process. I thanked her for her time. I stood up, and I walked out of the room. I stepped into the hallway and stood there for exactly 30 seconds. I breathed. Then I went back to work, because there was a company to rebuild, and I had 45 employees whose livelihoods depended on me getting this right. That evening, I called my mother. She had been through every version of this story with me. She knew the rock bottom. She knew the crackers on the kitchen floor. She knew the scholarship applications and the 11 p.m. work sessions and the MBA classes on weekends. When I told her what had happened, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Baby, I always knew." I called 2 of my old friends, women who had stayed by me through the divorce, who had sent me care packages and coffee and honest conversation when I needed it. I told them. They screamed. They cried. They made me promise to celebrate properly the next time I was back in Chicago. I thought about who Emma Thompson was 5 years ago. 29 years old, sitting in a kitchen at sunrise watching her marriage dissolve. No job, no plan. Believing, somewhere deep and unexamined, that maybe she had deserved it. That woman deserved better. Not just from Daniel and Kayla, but from me. I should have bet on her sooner. I should have trusted her sooner. The woman I am now, she is not defined by what was taken from her. She is defined by what she chose to build in the absence of everything she lost. And if I am honest with you, the greatest revenge was not walking into that boardroom. The greatest revenge was walking into my own life and realizing I was finally exactly where I was supposed to be, just on my own terms. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Daniel showed me who he was. Kayla showed me who she was. And the universe, in its strange and patient way, showed me who I was. I run Hargrove Solutions now, except we're renaming it. The old name belongs to a version of this company that no longer exists. What we're building now is something entirely different. Leaner, more ethical, more focused. I have 47 people counting on me to get this right, and I take that seriously every single day. I never remarried. I haven't ruled it out. But I have learned something about myself in these 3 years that I didn't know before. I am not a supporting character in someone else's story. I am the main character in my own. And that understanding has changed everything. To anyone watching this who is sitting in their own version of that Chicago apartment, ceiling stain, broken radiator, 3 a.m. on the floor. I want you to hear this. Your rock bottom is not your final address. It is the foundation you will build on. Every humiliation, every rejection, every night you cried yourself to sleep and still got up the next morning. That is not weakness. That is the training ground for who you're becoming. Don't rush. Don't make noise. Don't show your hand. Just build. And one day, you'll be standing in a room that was never supposed to be yours, and it will feel like exactly where you always belonged. Thank you for watching Betravex. If this story moved you, if it gave you something, please share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. Subscribe to this channel. We tell true stories of strength, survival, and the kind of justice that takes time and patience. Drop a comment and tell me what moment in this story hit you hardest. I read every single one. Until next time, stay patient, stay quiet, stay building. Emma Thompson.